Hey everyone, and a huge warm welcome to all the focus learners joining us for today's Charcha. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here because, honestly, the journey we're going on today is just mind-blowing. We are diving deep into the hidden architecture of emotion. We're going to explore the incredible ways humans have engineered sound, words, and even silence to process our deepest feelings. It's a journey that starts way back in ancient deserts and brings us right into the cutting-edge algorithms of modern artificial intelligence. We're talking about everything from virtual poets narrating modern solitude to this fascinating concept of data grief.
To kick things off, I want you to ask yourself a somewhat weird question. What on earth could possibly connect a 7th century poem recited in a royal court, a soothing lullaby whispered in the dark, and the chaotic white noise of a busy coffee shop? I mean, on the surface, they seem completely, totally unrelated, right? But the crazy acoustic mystery here is that all three of these things share the exact same foundation. They are all highly engineered forms of sound specifically designed to trigger human emotion and create psychological focus. Let's see exactly how this works.
Section 1. Engineering the Ancient Ghazal. The Strict Rules of Heartbreak.
Okay, let's dive right into this. When we think of a ghazal, we usually just think of beautiful poetry or romance, right? But try looking at it differently today. Think of it as an incredibly precise, ancient piece of technology, literally built to process profound human sorrow. Imagine carrying a 10-year-old heartbreak. You know that feeling of scanning faces in an airport security line, just hoping against hope to see that one specific person? The ghazal was engineered to capture exactly that kind of complex, lingering grief. And it didn't just appear out of nowhere. Back in 7th century Arabia, there was this long, royal poetic form called the qasida, used to praise tribal leaders. But poets would start these recitations with a brief, super melancholic intro about a lost love or a ruined camp, called the nasib. Over time, that relatable human sorrow of the nasib completely outgrew the royal praises. By the 10th and 11th centuries, it traveled to Persia, where poets added the tahalis, a personal pen name to basically stamp their ownership on that specific grief. Finally, by the 12th century, Sufi saints like Amir Khusro brought it to the Indian subcontinent, beautifully blending Persian with the local Hindi language. It's just a perfect evolution of a poetic machine.
Now you might think, hey, expressing deep emotional pain requires total, absolute freedom. But the ghazal actually operates on a strict structural code, almost exactly like computer programming. A ghazal is made up of independent couplets called a shir. The first one is the mutla, the last is the makta. But the real engine driving the emotion, that's the radif and kafia. The radif is a specific word or phrase repeated exactly at the end of every single couplet, and right in front of it sits the kafia, the rhyming word. It's this incredibly strict, repetitive meter that takes chaotic, unpredictable human grief and structures it into a soothing musical rhythm.
And this brilliantly illustrates how structure actually creates freedom. It's often said that a ghazal is like a pearl necklace. Each individual share or pearl is completely independent. Like literally, one couplet can be about a beautiful, joyful smile, and the very next couplet can be about a devastating, life-shattering tragedy. There's no need for a narrative link between them at all. Yet they are perfectly bound together by that strong thread of the radif and kafia. It allows the poet to jump wildly between different emotional states without ever breaking the listener's trance.
But the absolute superpower of the ghazal lies in its ambiguity. Think about this duality for a second. A poet writes about an intense, agonizing wait for a beloved. For a listener going through a brutal breakup, they hear ishq-e majazi, earthly, human love. But at the exact same moment, a spiritually inclined listener hears ishq-e hakiki, a deep, divine longing for God. The emotional data is so flawlessly structured that it adapts entirely to whoever is listening. It's just an immortal way to process both our human isolation and our spiritual longing.
Section 2. AI and the Virtual Poet. Coding Human Warmth.
So what happens when we take that ancient longing of the ghazal and drag it into the digital age? Let's fast forward from the deserts of the 7th century straight into the virtual landscapes of today. We are fully entering the era of AI and the virtual poet. Historically, text-to-speech was, let's face it, pretty robotic and totally cold. But modern platforms like CapCut, they don't just read words anymore. They analyze the text for emotional context. The AI knows exactly when it should sound joyful, when to get serious, or when to drop down into a whisper. And it goes way beyond just editing TikTok videos. There's a brilliant platform called Voice Labs that brings this AI straight into children's bedrooms. They create native Hindi bedtime stories using AI that actually mimics human breathing patterns and natural pauses. For modern nuclear families who might not have grandparents living down the hall, this screen-free audio accelerates a child's cognitive and emotional intelligence by preserving that crucial tradition of oral storytelling in their mother tongue.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the physiological science behind how it works. It isn't just about pronouncing the Hindi words correctly. When Voice Labs generates these stories, the AI audio is deliberately slowed down to a 0.8x playback speed. Why? Well, because this slow rhythmic pacing gets processed by the brain and actively triggers the parasympathetic nervous system. It literally sends a biological signal to the child's brain saying, hey, the environment is safe. It perfectly mimics the physical comfort and warmth of a grandmother's voice, allowing the child to naturally wind down and fall asleep. We are literally writing code to trigger biological comfort. How wild is that?
Section 3. Capturing raw emotional data, the hardware of solitude. Let's flip the script for a second, though. What if you want to capture your own raw, highly imperfect emotion? Like, say, you want to recite that ghazal about your own heartbreak. AI is almost too perfect for that. To capture the real stuff, the sharp breath, the sudden crack in a voice, the raw data of human emotion, we have to rely on the hardware of solitude, which is audio engineering. And you have to choose your weapon carefully here. The acoustic world is basically divided into two types of microphones. First, the condenser mic. This has an ultra-thin, electrically charged diaphragm that captures the tiniest change in air pressure. Think of it like a massive HD portrait camera. It captures every pore, every subtle breath, but unfortunately also every single bit of background noise like your neighbor's dog barking. Then you have the dynamic mic. This is your rugged field camera. It is deliberately built to ignore the chaos around it and focus entirely on the subject right in front of it. Which brings us to an incredible piece of acoustic geometry.
The real secret to why dynamic mics work so well for capturing focused emotion is to find right here, the cardioid polar pattern. Cardioid simply means heart-shaped. It creates this invisible heart-shaped acoustic bubble directly in front of the microphone. It actively rejects and ignores sound coming from the sides and the rear. This exact bubble is why roughly 70% of podcasters use dynamic mics, like the Shure SM7B, because most of us are recording in totally untreated home studios or bedrooms, and we need the hardware itself to artificially build a bubble of solitude around us.
So the crucial point here is that hardware alone just isn't going to cut it. You could buy the most expensive microphone in the world, and it will sound absolutely terrible if you put it in an empty, echoing room. There's a big difference we need to understand. Soundproofing blocks external noise, which usually requires tearing down walls and expensive construction. But acoustic treatment, that stops internal sound from bouncing off your hard walls. This is exactly why you see so many content creators building DIY blanket forts. Heavy fabrics absorb those echoes. Even better, sitting in front of a bookshelf creates natural diffusion. All those irregular shapes of the books scatter the flat sound waves, stopping them from bouncing right back into the mic. We are engineering our physical spaces today just as meticulously as those ancient poets engineered their ghazals.
Section 4. Acoustic masking and solitude. The paradox of focus.
Okay, so here is the ultimate paradox. We spend all this time, all this money, and all this effort to engineer these perfectly silent rooms to record our emotions in. But when we actually sit down in them and try to focus on our work, that very silence drives our brains absolutely crazy. Think back to our opening question about the busy coffee shop. Why on earth do we seek out noise to find peace? The answer is acoustic masking. See, our brains evolved out in the wild, where pure silence meant only one thing: extreme danger, a predator stalking you. So in a perfectly quiet, sound-treated room, your primal brain goes into complete hyper-alert mode. Suddenly, you're focusing on every ticking clock or the hum of your laptop fan. Acoustic masking uses artificial, low-complexity background noise to cover up those sudden distracting sounds. It completely tricks your brain into feeling safe again.
There are incredible tools out there, like the My Noise generator, that use something called pseudo-babble. It sounds exactly like a crowded cafe where dozens of people are talking, but your brain cannot decipher a single actual word. And because there's no clear language to decode, your brain's language centers don't get overstimulated. Instead, it just creates this continuous, warm background texture. Your brain finally stops wasting all its energy on threat detection and easily slides right into a deep flow state. This kind of engineered chaos is unbelievably effective for maintaining focus, especially for folks navigating ADHD. In a weird way, it is the ultimate cure for the crushing, perfect silence of modern digital solitude.
Section 5. Data grief, the imperfect human resonance.
So we've journeyed all the way from the strict metrics of the ancient ghazal to AI bedtime stories, physical microphones, and acoustic masking. All of these are attempts to perfectly engineer sound. But to wrap up today, we really have to confront this impending, massive collision between our new technology and our old human imperfection.
And that is this concept of data grief. Artificial intelligence is getting better every single day. Tomorrow, a virtual poet AI might be able to read that ancient ghazal, complete with a harsh breath, a specific throat clearing, and the exact heartbreaking crack in the voice of someone carrying a 10-year-old loss. When a machine can perfectly, flawlessly replicate our deepest, most painful flaws, what actually happens to human emotion? Does it just become another algorithmic preset you select from a drop-down menu? Or is there some magical, unengineerable resonance in our actual, lived human flaws that no code will ever truly be able to capture? So next time you're sitting in a quiet room or waiting in a long airport line, take a second. Listen closely to the subtle imperfections in the voices of the people around you. Because that, right there, that might just be where our true humanity lies. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible Charcha today. Stay curious, keep learning, and I will see you in our very next explainer.